I don't want to spend those years fighting with my body. We don't have forever. This isn't a dress rehearsal. And this body that has gotten you to this point has done some amazing things. And I would love to change that talk. I'm not trying to get you to believe everything is great. I understand you're frustrated, you're tired, but are you growing? Are you working towards making peace with my body? That would be the statement I could start with. I am taking steps. I am moving towards, rather than it's a fact.
Welcome back, my listeners. In today's episode of the Menopause Disruptor podcast, I'm joined by obesity medicine physician, Dr. Laure DeMattia, who shares her deeply personal journey from childhood body image struggles, years of chronic dieting and binge eating, to becoming a leading voice in compassionate obesity care. Together, we unpack why women's bodies become especially vulnerable to weight changes during puberty, pregnancy, perimenopause, and menopause, all before major hormonal transitions. We'll explore the science behind set point theory and challenge the outdated eat less, move more narrative that has left so many women feeling ashamed. Dr. DeMattia, or Dr. D, also explains why obesity deserves the same evidence-based individualized treatment as any other chronic disease, including the appropriate use of GLP-1 medications and bariatric surgery, while cautioning against using these tools solely for cosmetic weight loss. Rather than chasing a number on the scale, she encourages listeners to focus on health, energy, confidence, and what she calls non-scale victories. Her new book, The 4 Food Cues, offers a refreshing alternative to diet culture. Instead of prescribing another restrictive eating plan, it introduces the chef framework: craving, hunger, energy, and fullness. A simple, practical system that helps readers understand their body signals, build awareness without perfectionism, and create sustainable habits that support long-term health. Through compassionate guidance, relatable stories, and practical tools like her latter statements, Dr. D empowers readers to move beyond shame, reconnect with their bodies, and develop a healthier relationship with food, one cue at a time. And we'll get into all that. But before we begin, here's something you need to know about Dr. D. Dr. Laure DeMattia is a dual board certified physician in family and obesity medicine. Drawing on decades of clinical experience and her own lifelong journey of weight, Dr. D brings a rare combination of medical expertise, empathy, and authenticity to the complex world of metabolic health. Known for her practical and relatable approach, she helps women navigate the intersection of physical and mental health in their journeys to better health. Outside of medicine, Dr. D is passionate about her family, feeding people, and anything Italian. Please join me in welcoming Dr. D to the Menopause Disruptor podcast. Welcome, Dr. D, to the Menopause Disruptor podcast. So happy to have you here.
Hi, Mary. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So, Dr. Laure, Dr. D, I'm going to stumble on one or the other. But let's go back to your backstory, the very beginning. Take us back to a time where you started to have a relationship with food and body image growing up, and how that shifted towards your insights now in the work that you do in overcoming obesity.
Well, it started very, very young for me. I would say I remember very vividly, like right around 9, or even before then. I would say probably my first 6, I remember thinking I needed to change my body. And I loved gymnastics, and I was very tall and not a body that was commonly seen in gymnastics, but I was very limber and could do all kinds of crazy things. And turns out I'm hypermobile. Okay. But at the time we didn't know that. And so I really enjoyed gymnastics, but I didn't fit what was classically the kind of body that participated in gymnastics. And so I'm not sure if that and dancing, what a lot of little girls get into, if that influenced my awareness. But just being really tall, I think also I was big for my age, and I was like little round in the stomach compared to my friends. And so I remember thinking I need to change things even then, but I didn't really get onto a formal diet until probably eighth grade. And Weight Watchers, is what I did. And by then I had already been binging and restricting so much so that when I did what Weight Watchers asked me to do, I actually gained weight. And so I had already kind of messed the system up because by then I was 14. So I had probably 6 years of doing things that weren't healthy.
So you were on Weight Watchers in your youth?
In middle school. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not sure when I look back. I think I went to my first obesity clinic when I was in my second year of high school, and they were a little perplexed about what I was doing there because they're like, I guess you could lose like 10 pounds, like you really don't fit our typical. I was playing 3 sports, very, very active, but I was binge eating during that time. And, back then there was not a diagnosis. It was only very much later in my life that I knew there was an issue and I was trying to get help. But the people who I was coming into contact with really just knew bulimia and anorexia. They didn't know about like how to deal with binge eating. And so that was not until probably my almost 40s where I actually got really solid treatment for that.
Is that right? Incredible. And so the messaging around the time when you were dancing and in gymnastics and your own body image narrative, I guess you could say, what was happening in that space in that time that would encourage youth to think the best thing to do to be accepted or to fit in is to have this certain body type?
Well, so I was in high school in the 90s, like late 80s, early 90s. And I don't know if in Canada this was popular, but there was this, like in the fashion industry, like heroin chic was very popular during that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like I feel like 80s, 90s, like there was a lot of body image issues in Hollywood and just across the board. And so I was probably a forerunner in the sense of, but there's a lot of little girls who starting at 5 start saying they need to do, like they're too fat.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then, so you fast forward to the menopause era where hormones are shifting and it's wreaking havoc on inflammation in the body and how the body stores fat and how estrogen shifts from a role of anti-inflammatory and immunomodulatory. Ooh, those are big words, and I feel really important saying them. And then all that past trauma that gets stored in the body comes to surface, and we're hit with this, oh my goodness, I didn't deal with those body images in the past. And now this is time to reconcile. Take us on that journey, whether it's happened to you or now the clients that you work with, the patients.
So I think it might have been my mid 30s. I mean, later 30s, early 40s was when I really got the help that I needed. And meaning it was a multidisciplinary team in terms of therapy, dietitian, medical, all helping me to try and address that. And so body image is one of those, it's a slippery slope and there's a lot of layers. I joke, we're like onions as humans, we got lots of layers. And for a lot of people, most of my career has been working with patients struggling with obesity. And in the life cycle for women, I try to talk about there's 3 main times where, I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of set point theory.
No, you have to share.
And it's not an accepted universal, it's a theory. And I don't think it's as easily explained, but basically our body is trying to maintain and repair, and would prefer us to stay in a kind of tight spot, meaning like your heart rate, your blood pressure, your blood sugar, like it doesn't want to chase these wild swings. And so when we have health, typically our body is going to try and keep us in a tighter range. And weight is one of those things. And so most people have kind of a natural steady state that their body is pretty comfortable, and maybe they'll drift up a couple pounds and maybe they'll drift down a couple pounds, but it gets influenced by so many things. And so for women, we are especially vulnerable at the time of puberty, where we're going to gain so much body fat in order to ovulate. And so I have patients who that's the first time they struggled with their weight. They really, as kids, never had any issues. And it was only during puberty that they started to gain. I have plenty of women who that never was an issue. They gained body fat and, navigated that just fine. And it wasn't until pregnancy when they started to struggle with weight. And so again, each pregnancy is an individual experience. And I've had women who've had 4 pregnancies, and the 2 middle pregnancies were beautiful and no real struggles. But the bookends really were challenging pregnancies, meaning like gestational diabetes for the first and the last, and not in the middle, which that is kind of an unusual. Once you have gestational diabetes, the risk goes higher at typically more pregnancies, but each pregnancy can be very different. And so a lot of people, you have to gain a certain amount of body or weight to help that baby grow. And so that's normal, but sometimes the system doesn't come back to the pre-pregnancy weight. And so they start the next pregnancy 10, 15 pounds heavier because they didn't get all that pregnancy weight off, because the system was shifted, so their set point, their steady state got moved higher. And so then the body starts protecting that space. And if you have 4 kids and you gain 10, 15 pounds with each kid, that can be a substantial shift in your physiology. And so there's women who did fine in puberty, did fine during pregnancy, and it really is that perimenopause into menopause where I'm not sure, I would say no journey is easy, but I'm not sure which one's harder, in the sense of if you've never struggled with your weight and then all of a sudden, as you're going through this transition, you're 30 pounds heavier and you haven't had to navigate that. I think that's especially challenging. And so there's a lot of women who are doing the exact same thing that help them stay healthy and fit, all of their lives. And then they're all of a sudden gained 30 pounds during that perimenopause into menopause. So those are the 3 in the life cycle for women that I think really, whether people are aware of it or not, but usually when we are talking, we'll kind of go through the history. And so for me, from very early, way before puberty helped me thin out. I grew into some of my weight and didn't really struggle with my weight if you look at the objective numbers. Now, did I think that I was at a healthy weight? No, I did not. I thought I was very much overweight. So that's the whole your mind's eye and the reality, don't always match up. And so that's where I think I would just encourage, if anyone's kind of struggling with body image and you might not meet the criteria for binge eating, it's still worthwhile, especially for women, because I feel like we judge ourselves and then we also feel judged by, and unfortunately, I wish I could say that's not true, that this is a fabrication in my mind, but no, women are judged more harshly on the physical appearance. And so it's really important to work with a professional to try and help make peace with that, because I've taken care of 80-year-old women who are need to lose, 20 pounds for a wedding, or they think they do, and I just don't agree with that. So.
I would say this is a perfect time to break for a word from our sponsors. Guess what? You, my listeners, are my sponsors. That's right. I would love it if you could support the show. Helping me will help bring these amazing episodes to you each and every week, just packed full of information to help you on your menopause journey. And to support the show, all you have to do is go into the show notes and click just above where you read Meet Your Host. In green is Support the Show. You click on the button and it'll bring you to a page where you have the option to donate monthly, 3, 5, 8, 10. You can be a loyal supporter for as long as you want with recurring fee as little as $3 a month and opt out at any time. Each investment goes directly back into producing episodes with even better content, improved audio quality, and will go a long way in bringing great guests onto the show. Yeah. So let's bridge your experience, both as a patient and somebody who experienced binge eating and body image, to now into a profession, a physician who is focusing on the obesity, and not just obesity in general, but the negative self-talk and the pushing harder and the self-blame that comes with it. So take us on that journey of how that transition came.
Well, when I was in medical school, I was like, I really think I would like to learn more about what's going wrong here, because I felt like I had worked really hard as an athlete and I trained like my friends did, and I did not have the same physical kind of response to the workouts that my friends did. And I played basketball in college, and so physical activity and I are long friends. We've done that for a long time. And so I was just thinking, okay, like let's figure this out. And back then in the late 90s, it was the infancy of really obesity medicine, because in the 60s, phentermine was first made available and as a prescription medication. And the indication for phentermine, it is allowed for 3 months. And that is a very old, like archaic approach in terms of 3 months, because back in the 60s, it was not viewed as a chronic disease. It was viewed as a character flaw, as many things were. So like mental health and addiction, all kind of went through growing pains over the years. But so phentermine still, because it's such an inexpensive medicine, they haven't changed the labeling and it still says 3 months. But there are other medicines that are in the same family that have updated information and are used as a chronic long-term medication. So anyway, medical school, I was learning more how not to take care of patients with obesity. So many physicians, mostly male, I'll say that, were saying things like, well, you just need to put the fork down and push away from the table. And have you ever thought about taking a walk? And I was like, did you not hear what they just said? They're doing all those things. They're looking to you for more guidance and treatment options. And there just wasn't a lot of education at that point. And so I sought out mentors who were further along because I was looking how to do this right. And so I was very lucky to find a very compassionate, empathetic doctor that really is still helping to inform both patients and clinicians even now. And so I was at Northwestern and I got to work with Dr. Robert Kushner, and he had just started a combined surgical and medical weight management program. And it was wonderful. And I was very lucky to be able to work with him so much. So I enjoyed it so much that I ended up doing my residency there and they didn't have fellowship at that time for obesity medicine. They do now, but I did kind of a longitudinal rotation where I got to spend more time, like 6 months, working with the team. And so it was really eye-opening. And that was where I was really first introduced to bariatric surgery. And at that point, I was family medicine. And I said, well, this is great. Like we have a really strong tool here. But what about the kids and like trying to prevent needing to have bariatric surgery? And so then I ended up doing pediatric obesity care for a while. And then just more and more like kind of got experience, and now I've probably the pendulum swings, right? And so I would say I'm probably more middle ground. I want people to, especially women, work on making peace with their body, and that we're all built kind of, we each have a different story that we're going to life story experience. And man, are there so many different influencers about what your steady state is going to be. And so really an interesting time, because GLP-1s have really kind of made people seek care that weren't necessarily seeking care before. And part of why I have done what I've done is because I wanted to be a sane voice. There's a lot of stuff online that it makes me very nervous for patients. Like, I think people don't understand some of the risk benefits, that they're taking on. And almost there's some people who are very cavalier about what they're doing for what I call vanity weight. And so I've worked with, people who felt like prisoners in their body. And like that is probably going to be a different story than someone who has 10, 15 pounds to lose. So it's been all over the place, but I think I'm much more middle of the road than some people would want me to be. They the 80-year-old who wanted me to give them phentermine to lose 20 pounds for the wedding of whoever, they got very upset with me because I was like, no, my first job is to do no harm, and to give you phentermine would potentially kill you. And so, there's a difference of opinion when people are seeking, because they've struggled for so long and they feel like no one's listened, or it's a cycle that they've been going through. And so there are healthy approaches, and there's things that I think put people more at risk.
And now with the increasing rise of use of peptides and GLP-1 as an example, in the phentermine that you talked about, do you feel that these are, let's just say, cop-outs? I don't want to use that word cop-out. I find it's too harsh.
Absolutely not a cop-out. So would you consider someone whose blood pressure was not controlled with 2 blood pressure medicines, adding a third, a cop-out?
Would I? No.
No. Yeah. I want listeners to understand that this is a very complex disease state, and diet and exercise are the cornerstone for many diseases, obesity being one of them, but like hypertension, high cholesterol, diabetes, all of those, cancer prevention, diet and exercise are going to be the first step. But so many patients that I work with, like I had a gentleman who he was able to lose 65 pounds through diet and exercise, which, I mean, I wish I could say I have been able to lose that much weight through diet and exercise. That does not happen for me. It's like 10 pounds I can lose through diet and exercise, and I can restrict food, like nobody else, which is not healthy. But I'm just saying I have done crazy things in the past. But my system is very protective, and it like puts the stall, like it will increase my hunger, increase my craving, increase my fatigue to the point where I can't go beyond. I'm not that I should do that, but there's just usually a lot more safety in too much weight loss. The body is going to try to prevent. It sees that as dangerous, even though maybe someone could lose 50 pounds because their health would be better off, but their body doesn't necessarily agree with that. So anyway, this gentleman lost 65 pounds through diet and exercise, and he was running a 5K twice a month and loved running and all these things. And when we met, he wanted to lose, I think, another 40, 50 pounds. And so we found out he was unaware that he had diabetes. And I mean, it was a shock to how strong, where he was in his state, because he had been working with a doctor, and like it just popped up in 1 year kind of thing. And so he had been being followed by a doctor and didn't even have pre-diabetes. And all of a sudden he was really bad diabetes. So anyway, so we got the diabetes treated with GLP-1, and it helped him. He is now maintaining 130-pound weight loss. And he's like, I feel the healthiest I've felt in my whole life. Like as an adult, I have never felt this strong and healthy. And so for someone like that, that's an amazing tool. And, cost benefit ratio, absolutely in the favor of using a GLP-1. But he was talking about how so many people don't cheat by taking the jab, is what so many people
Yeah.
call it.
The magic
And
pill. Yeah. Right.
yeah. And so I don't know what it is with, there's a lot of thinking and talk in our brains. And
Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from, in the sense of there's a lot of societal pressures to do it the right way. And I don't know what that means. It's really interesting.
I'm glad that you made it very clear that this isn't the cop out. This, in some regards, is seen as an important step to address weight concerns that are encroaching on some serious cardiometabolic diseases, even Alzheimer's and dementia, with the increased formation in our body, and a number of other issues that come with carrying too much weight, diabetes. And that there still seems to be the shame and blame. So on the one hand, I'm noticing that increased education is coming out, even through my training as a menopause coach and through the Girls Gone Strong, where I received my strength training specialty certification, and with Menopause Expert Group. And we spoke about that just before we hit the record button, for which I'm a licensed menopause champion. And GLP-1s is our latest module in the training we need to have. And I really am glad that you press upon us that this is an important step to control some serious weight issues, and working with a doctor, of course, so that you can identify that. But I do fear, and because I've witnessed it and I've heard of women wanting to take it for the vanity reasons still. So because we see in the midlife, we get the midlife belly fat. And that is a signal of the body saying that things are shifting, and it detects the hormonal fluctuations as a stress on the body. And so the body is designed to store when there is a stressor. But they want to just take it without considering all the other factors. How do you coach, or how do you counsel your patients when they come to you with the vanity issues? And because of your background, I suspect you could probably detect also that they have some body image or maybe some eating disorders that stem back even decades before their request to get into the GLP-1s.
I probably have some recall bias, in the sense of there may very well be people who I've tried to counsel that they just did not agree with my approach. And so then they sought care elsewhere. So obviously you want to have a good relationship and be trusting the person who you're working with. And it's a double-edged sword, because I have patients who still have doctors telling them stuff like, I don't believe in GLP-1s, or, like, that's interesting. That is not a religion that I'm aware of, so I don't want people to be stuck with, if there's someone who's has their kind of approach. There is something called physician inertia, where we have a long-term relationship with someone and we see them time and time again. And so then we stop kind of looking at them with a fresh set of eyes. And so sometimes it is a wise idea to get a second opinion, to have someone who's kind of getting your whole story, like as it stands now, instead of putting it piece by piece over the years. And so sometimes there's, like I said, double-edged. You can have someone who knows everything about you and has been with you through thick and thin, but you might be stuck addressing the same issue in the same way. And then if you get a second opinion and have this fresh approach, it might be very helpful. So I don't want to discourage any of that, but I do definitely try to work on how people are viewing themselves, and that this number on the scale is not what they think it is, and it's not the end all be all, because I have people who have a very high body fat percentage And that's going to be less healthy than someone who has a higher weight, but has a higher muscle. So we were talking about women who it's more of a vanity kind of concern. And, you know, you got to take not just the number on the scale into consideration. There are many different clinical applications. So something that I think a lot of people might not necessarily be aware of is like obstructive sleep apnea. As long as you meet the criteria from a obesity standpoint and you have sleep apnea, Medicare is going to cover that in the US. I'm not sure how Canada is addressing that, but it's really important to take stock of where you're trying to go and what are we trying to get out of this. And I try to get people to talk about non-scale victories and what are we really working on, because what I found is that there's something called the arrival fallacy, where they have a particular number, they get to that number, and then they move the goalpost. And I'll be happy when I get here. And I need people to be working on their well-being, whatever their weight is, especially in bariatric surgery patients. That is really pronounced. The arrival fallacy, if I lose 100 pounds, I'm going to have all these things happen. And the reality is it's a smaller body, but still the same problems. And so like, if you don't address those problems emotionally, relationships, like those aren't going to necessarily get healed suddenly because of the weight loss.
Yeah. You have a really unique perspective in this area. I really appreciate that with your work. You're not just speaking from your clinical expertise and training as a doctor, you're speaking from lived experience. And I really feel that combination makes your message resonate so deeply to women, those who want to do the bariatric surgery, those who are looking at taking a pill or a GLP-1, and then also helping them understand the language, like the blame, the shame, knowing full well that there's judgment, no matter how much we try to say, oh, and then we never would talk about us that way. So taking all those years of your own personal struggle, your professional insight, and you turned it into something practical and empowering, which led you to your book, The 4 Food Cues. So I'd love if you could just inspire us a little bit about the book, the story behind it. What made you decide also that now was the time to put your insights into a framework for the rest of the world?
So the reason that the book came to be was really because in the US in 2021, it just started to get kind of crazy in the social media space about GLP-1s. And like, I don't know if this is true in Canada, but like Ozempic face and Ozempic finger. And I was like up to here I was like, stop using the word Ozempic, because that is not the right medicine. It's Wegovy if you're going to talk about obesity. And so it was very frustrating. Like I had to kind of stay off social media for a bit because people were just like really getting me riled up. And I was like, I originally went into medicine wanting to do research and like trying to impact more than the person who was right in front of me. And I have done research, but I didn't that wasn't my main, focus throughout the years. And I was like, well, that could be another way of impacting more than the person in front of you if you wrote a book. And so I do feel like not for everyone, like my experiences do resonate with a lot of people because I'm in the boat, trying to row along. I'm not like, hey, you need to do this and up here on high. I'm trying to figure this out. And what even extra interesting is that I've been embedded in multiple teams from both peds to adults, bariatric surgery to medical, and each team that I've worked with has had a way. This is the way. And I just don't see it that way. Like, I believe that each patient has their way that they need to figure out for themselves. And they're their own experiment. And I'm just here to help try to figure it out with them. Because as an example, intermittent fasting, for some of my patients, like that is the best thing that they could do. For me, I am hangry and not fun to be around if I'm going to do intermittent fasting. So you don't want me to do that. But there's patients who it helps them, their hunger is so much quieter. They don't eat as big of portions. But then I have some people who try it and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm binging, because I'm so hungry by the time that I get to eat. That probably would not be a good fit for them. And I wouldn't encourage them to continue that. I joke that I'm a flexitarian in the sense of I've tried it all. I have been a guinea pig and I know what works for me and I can share that, but that doesn't mean that that's going to work for you. And when you look at all the research, I think that's part of the problem with the frustration for patients is, well, they said coffee's good. They said coffee's bad. Fat is good. Fat is bad. Like, what is it, doc? And I don't know. Like, we can take it with a grain of salt and try to come up with what is going to help you feel your strongest, healthiest, and most energetic individual for yourself. So I can make some wide statements about less processed foods best, like that is, but that's not a particular approach to eating. We know more fruits and vegetables over animal product. In general, people do better health-wise long-term with a smaller amount of animal product. But I have some patients who swear that, they're high protein, which is animal product for them, that's really what has helped them feel so strong and healthy. And we're checking labs. And so as long as we're kind of tracking things, and it's not just I feel better, it's also my labs have improved, or my waist circumference is going down, or, there's some objective measurements, and it's a way of eating that you can do for the rest of your life. Because there are some people who try to do keto, and even if you can find a way to do that forever, there are people who do it. There's absolutely people who do it. It's just the body is meant to break down carbohydrate. Like it is going to try to get you to get carbohydrates in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I love what you said almost early on, is that it's an approach that is experimental. And much like we say in the menopause arena, when you're coaching menopause or helping women through it, is HRT right for me? It's like, well, it depends. Treat this phase in your life as an experiment and observe and be almost like the alchemist of your journey through it. And I love how you explain it, giving permission to be experimental without fixating on either intermittent fasting, keto diet, or a rigid diet that says you must be pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan, the carnivore diet, and on and on and on. And in your book, and I'm hoping you'll enlighten us on this, at the cornerstone of your book is a framework that helps people take it out of just what to eat and how to eat, and rather looking at the main cues. So let's get into that.
Yes. So I wanted a way to communicate with people about how to try to figure themselves out. So I came up with acronym CHEF, a framework. And CHEF stands for C is for craving, H is for hunger, E is for energy, and F is for fullness. And those 4 areas, in my opinion, are really what I saw time and time again. I'd have people tell me, I'm not that hungry. I don't eat that much. And I'm like, okay. And so then I'll say, well, are you feeling like it's more impulse or entertainment, like trying to find out. And so that's where is it like the idea of something really starts weighing on them. So that's the craving. Like if their brain is constantly telling them that chocolate is just over there, let's go get it. And it's not really coming from your stomach. I mean, your brain is the one who's really, we call it food chatter for a lot of people. And so craving is something that, I'll use myself as an example. Like I'm Italian, pasta is part of our culture, but I figured out that when I would have a bowl of pasta, mainly, like that's the biggest part of the meal, not only would I not feel good hour and a half after eating it, I'd be sluggish. So my energy would be low. I would be overly full. And then I would typically be craving higher carb for days after eating it. It's not just like that day. And so I still sometimes have pasta, but I am aware that I'm going to pay the price for that. I could make it safer for me by making it just a little bit of pasta and mostly vegetables and protein. And so for me, Italian insalata caprese, like the mozzarella, tomato, basil, olive oil, like that, my body loves that and it loves me. And so like it's a really great way to get my Italian on without paying for it. And so that's craving. Hunger for some people, it's like I'm going to eat more frequently than someone. I have people who are almost like camels where they eat once a day. Like there's no signal. And then all of a sudden it gets overwhelming and then they eat a large meal. I can't imagine that. Like my brain and my stomach is constantly telling me, hey, and for me, I think my blood sugar has been playing a role for a long time where my blood sugar will drop and I'll get a sense that I'm hungry, even though I just ate an hour and a half ago. But it's probably because my blood sugar is dropping and my body's trying to help me, protect me. So I have figured out like I need a mixed meal of fiber, fat, and protein. If I have a really nice mixture like the insalata caprese, or another meal that I have figured out like chicken, avocado, and tomato, like I think I've gone to heaven. Like I love that mixture. My system really does well with that. And that's what works for me. So like I know that's a safe meal for me. Like if I'm wanting to like really be strong in my day, like that would be a choice to make sure that that's part of my day. But I'm hungry a lot more frequently than other people. But then I have the opposite, patients who don't have any signal for hunger, and it's only like when they start eating for we eat. I mean, we make over 200 decisions a day about, am I going to eat that? Am I not going to eat that? Am I going to take another bite? What do I want? Like we are constantly, whether we're aware of it or not, but food is a big part of our day. And so a lot of people will eat because it's time, like everyone's going to lunch. I'm going to eat because it's lunchtime. And I'm not even really getting the messaging that I'm hungry, but I'm gonna do it. And then it's like, whew, they can't find full. So it wasn't hunger that got them to start. But once they started, their satiety level was not there. And so they had to eat a bigger portion to find full. And so that's a big deal for a lot of people, finding full. And then the energy, like I just want people to really pay attention to how food impacts them. So for me, again, the pasta is a great example, like, or a macaroni and cheese, like Kraft macaroni and cheese was like such a like treat. It was so rare. And I probably babysitting would get exposed to it more than at my home. And I would probably overdo it because, again, my problem with binge eating. And I would get really tired after eating macaroni and cheese. And it just was not, that is probably the pasta that was not a good fit for me. And the processed, like it was highly, highly processed. So those are the main things. And I want people, like so many patients have been asked to journal their food, like write down what you're eating. And usually there's a lot of shame around that. I don't know what it is about like having to show someone what you're doing. And if you're even really like being honest, because I don't like to share what I'm eating with another person. So, I mean, it makes sense to me that I would be not getting the true full story from everyone. But I wanted people to look at it from a different lens. Like it's not about, oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. It's let's see what your patterns are translating to. So I would have people rate their hunger 1 to 10. rate their energy 1 to 10. 10 being like I'm bouncing off the walls energy wise, and 1 is I'm so sluggish. Hunger, I'm not hungry at all, and 10 is I'm going to eat that chair. And just like H equals and then the number, E equals and then the number. So it's not necessarily about the makeup of the meal. It's really then what is the outcome of that meal. And so, I mean, not everyone would do when I asked them to do it, but we would uncover patterns that they were like, oh, yeah. So I have noticed when I have oatmeal in the morning, I feel so much better, and I'm not overly hungry by lunchtime. But when I have a piece of toast with jelly and butter, I can't make it, or a bowl of Captain Crunch or whatever cereal, I can't make it to lunchtime. I'm really, really hungry. And so we'll adjust, based off of that.
I love that. It's not a report card of all the things that you're consuming. It's just an observation going back to the experiment and observe in such a way that what does one thing translate to another, and can I see the pattern? And those patterns are golden. That is uncovering the mystery that so many people can then take radical responsibility of food choices and when to eat and how to eat just by having a little bit more insight. But it takes effort and it takes honesty.
And so another pattern that I recognized with a lot of my patients is that there's a lot of perfectionism and all or nothing, black and white kind of thinking. And by doing this approach, people could lose their notebook for a week and get back to just a couple of observations. And that was enough. That was helpful enough. It didn't have to be, I have to do it every day, 3 times a day and 4 times a day. And that kind of gave just a little bit took away some of that pressure that I think people put on themselves. And so that's another, like, what I learned during my treatment in eating disorder is perfectionism is alive and well in so many of us, but especially in eating disorder. And so trying to recognize that and then get comfortable with the shades of gray. And so that's where I feel like there's a fair amount, or I would talk to patients about, like, kind of some of what I do is eating disorder work, and I take from their knowledge base, and some of it is from addiction. And I kind of marry, it's a little hodgepodge of both areas. Like, there's definitely benefits of being aware of how they treat in those specialties, because it's not addiction for a lot of people, but there are aspects of, like, addiction. You have to eat every day for the rest of your life. You can't avoid that substance like you can in addiction work. And so that's where there isn't a full, kind of layover. It does not have all the same aspects. But I mean, do I think some people have, like, to highly processed foods? Like, for me, Cheetos, I wish I'd never met a Cheeto in my life. I don't know why those are so easy for me to eat. And, like, I mean, do I go out of my way to buy Cheetos? No, but it has that pull when I see the wrapper and that kind of stuff. And so for me, it's better to just avoid going down that aisle with the Cheetos. And so anyway, there's just things of both addiction and eating disorder that I think kind of play into the treatment.
Which in itself could be an entirely other podcast episode that we could really take a deep dive into, because it's quite a fascinating, bittersweet almost conversation, because it does uncover a lot of past traumas from childhood and turning to addiction, food, comfort, and all the stories that food and body image had been told to us as females, young girls, and then into our midlife years. But please tell our listeners, well, I do have one powerful question left. Yep. And that is for a woman who might be listening right now, who feels entirely defeated by her body and exhausted from dieting and afraid that she's never going to make some kind of peace with food, what would you want her to hear today?
I think it is possible if you let go of the messages that have been so ingrained. And so that takes some rebelliousness.
I love that.
Yeah, I just feel like I keep going back to this 80-year-old who wanted to lose 20 pounds because it just, for me, I don't want to spend those years fighting with my body. Like we don't have forever. This isn't a dress rehearsal. And this body that has gotten you to this point has done some amazing things. And I really would love to just change that talk. I try to get people to change a little bit of how they're talking to themselves. And so I would challenge them to use what I call is a ladder statement. So I don't want you to be Pollyanna. I'm not trying to get you to believe, everything is great. Like, I understand you're frustrated, you're tired, but are you growing? Are you working towards making peace with my body? That would be the statement I could start with. I am taking steps. I am moving towards, rather than it's a fact. I'm at peace with my body. Like that growth mentality is really helpful.
Yeah.
And then you have to surround yourself with other like-minded individuals because my gosh, are there some very interesting groups of friends that like are saying really awful things to themselves and then they're commenting on other people's bodies. And so then, oh, is that what you think about me? And so I really want people to call it, say, I'm working with my clinician, like that's really not up for discussion right now. Like if someone makes some statement.
You almost need to have the 4 food cues book club so women can get together, and men too, and discuss it. Yeah.
Yes, maybe that's on the horizon.
There you go. It'll be your next goal, your next task, to all the many wonderful things you've done, bringing this to a public audience. So please tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can find your book.
So the book right now is available on Amazon, both in an ebook and paperback. It is probably next week going to be on Audible as an audiobook.
Wonderful.
Yes, a lot of people like to walk and listen. And so drdematia.com is going to get you to like more about me and the book. You can message me through that if you have questions. And I haven't really launched it fully, but I am working towards like a community on school navigating. Beyond the Scale is what we're going to be trying to talk about health from a different perspective. About so much is focused on the number on the scale.
Yeah. When that finally launches, we'll bring you back and we can discuss that as well too. I would love to do.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Mattia, it was such a pleasure hearing your story. I think it's going to resonate with so many people. That is one of the struggles, whether it occurred earlier in life and has come back up in midlife, or as you said, it's the first time that they're struggling with these extra lbs and are going down that rabbit hole of blaming themselves and maybe not getting the support from their friends, family, partner, and are completely at loss. You share so candidly your story of having walked that journey and now share it in your book and all your work. So I really appreciate your insights, your energy, and your time.
Thank you so much, Mary. I hope we can talk more.
I hope so too. If today's insights resonated with you, I'd love for you to be a part of our growing community of menopause disruptors. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening right now. And if you know someone who can benefit from these conversations, please share this episode. Sometimes a simple act of sharing can be the first step in someone's healing journey. And hey, if you're ready to take the next step in your menopause journey, I'm here to support you. You can find all my services, including my comprehensive menopause intelligence digital course, one-on-one coaching programs, and workplace education consultation services at mlcoaching.com. It's in the show notes. Want to stay connected and get regular doses of menopause wisdom? Follow me on Instagram at Menopause Disruptor Podcast, where I share tips, insights, and real conversations about navigating this transformative phase of life. Let's continue to disrupt this menopause conversation together. Remember, midlife should be the best life, and it will be. Namaste.